Moments ago, the case against Jeremy Brokaw for distributing anti-Semitic flyers across the neighborhood of Squirrel Hill was adjourned. We were able to speak with Mr. Brokaw and his attorney, Josh Smith, to get their reaction on the conclusion of the trial. The prosecution ended up dropping 162 out of the 167 littering charges in a plea deal that came to its final conclusion after a series of unusual circumstances.
We reached a deal.
We agreed to plead guilty to 5 counts of littering for a fine of $1,500.
So you're happy with this outcome?
Yes. I mean, we could sit around here and go months and weeks and days, and all I'm going to do is take like a gamble. Take the $1,500 fine or go for $70,000. I think I just had to take the $1,500.
Are you at all surprised at that outcome, of the agreement you guys came to?
No, in fact, my leading prediction as to how it was going to, as to how it might turn out, was that the judge would convict on some number of them and then would dismiss the rest. But it would probably have been a number that was higher than 5. The reason they chose 5 is because there were 5 streets involved.
There were dozens of reports of several small plastic bags being thrown from a moving vehicle and into people's front yards and into their driveways.
It's 167 counts, right? And a checklist for each count to make the state prove its case. They only had 2 tickets on camera or something like that. And the officers wouldn't have been able to testify to most of them because they didn't observe them. For every ticket, we were going to have to go through the whole process of the officer testifying about each individual thing.
He didn't want to do that.
Nobody wanted to do that.
He didn't want to sit there all day.
Yeah, the time that we would be there, he'd end up having to pay me for that anyway. Large corporations, they like to settle cases instead of litigating them because it costs more to litigate them. Same thing with individuals, this is the same thing. Because again, there's no real collateral consequences for the convictions since they're summary offenses. So yeah, they're traffic tickets. They don't even go on your criminal record in Pennsylvania. Speeding can be worse.
So that being said, why go to this extent? Do you think it's some sort of political targeted thing?
It's obviously because of what was on the leaflets. And that's, of course, that's an unconstitutional reason to bring a case. But that's a hard thing to prove. Now, we did have an admission from Officer Wright from the first proceeding, which wasn't on the record, but he did make the admission, and he was there today, so we would have been able to call him as a witness. He did admit that, at least in part, he believed that the prosecution was because of what was on the paper. That's a great admission. It's content discrimination, viewpoint discrimination. It's patently unconstitutional. They're going to avoid that as much as possible because they can't make that admission. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that the whole thing is politically charged. Stacking 168 summary offenses is quite possibly unprecedented. I don't have any other example of something like that happening in Pennsylvania or really anywhere else in the country. The highest number of charges that anyone has faced for something like this, I think, is 7. The problem with arguing all that stuff is that technically there's nothing that prohibits the state from doing that.
The original date of the appeal on December 15th of 2025 was postponed after the judge granted a continuance to the prosecution. How often are continuances given out to a prosecuting team for a traffic citation when the police don't show up?
Virtually never. I think one of the reasons, there might have been others that morning even, because there was a snow event the day before, and so that's why the judge granted it, because presumably the officers weren't able to get there or something like that. I didn't necessarily buy any of that, but the judge has wide discretion to grant a continuance. He chose to. There's really nothing you can do about that. For something like this where you got Squirrel Hill going, he doesn't want to just dismiss it outright. That could end up biting him later.
The continuance postponed the appeal hearing to early May. However, neither Mr. Brokaw nor his attorney were notified of this date by the court, which provided several other news outlets a story on an apparent dismissal of the appeal upon failure to appear. News articles which would turn out to be the first notice of the court date the defendant was made aware of.
They had a hearing on May 7th. They never sent anything to either me or Jeremy about it. It was due to a court oversight. I did an investigation into what happened. It wasn't malicious. Obviously they needed to vacate that decision, which the court administrator did it the next day. They knew that something was wrong.
Within at least one of these articles, the judge made comments that could be interpreted as biased against the defendant, stirring even more controversy. So what about the comments the judge made specifically about Jeremy?
Something to the effect of, I hope we don't see him. I hope I don't see Mr. Brokaw again. Objectively speaking, if a judge is like, I don't want to see this person again, and then you end up back in front of them, do you really think you're going to get a fair shake? Objectively, the judge isn't obligated to accept a plea agreement. So you do have to sort of convince the judge in a sense. I think he was putting on a little bit of a show because, again, these are summary offenses accepted. Let's be done with it. But he wanted to sort of show people that he took it seriously. That's judicial politics. We don't care about that. We just care the result that we got, which is what we wanted. Different stakeholders in the case look at things differently. The prosecutors have their own stake in the case. Jeremy's got his stake in the case. The judge has his stake in the case, and that's what drives people's decisions usually.
I don't know. He come in here with a bunch of pamphlets and delivered them up at Squirrel Hill. Anti-Semitic is what it was. If you're in a community and you're Jewish, you got to have a recourse,
Their case was it's free speech, It's like where.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand that free speech stuff. That's the trouble with that free speech. They go a little bit too far on that. You can say anything you want.
And do you think that's a satisfying outcome, being charged $1,500?
I'm glad they got him and give him a punishment. Whether it's $1,500 or 3 months in jail, whatever. It's none of my concern, really.
So how do you think this is going to affect this method of distributing these kinds of materials?
This doesn't set any kind of precedent because there wasn't any case that was litigated. I think making the decision to do something like that is frequently, not always, but frequently, misguided political advocacy, and that particular energy could be spent doing political advocacy in the same vein, but through different means that are more effective.
What are your thoughts on the role that the mainstream media has played in this whole ordeal?
It's not unusual for the media to act like this, throwing shade whenever they can in an article that's supposed to be informational or something. But it's, this is expected. I don't even concern myself with it. They're going to do that regardless. Upstairs, one of them was trying to she brought up the Tree of Life synagogue murders from is that a decade ago at this point? If you're even bringing up something like that in the same conversation as this, you're too far gone to even be reasoned with. I know all the tricks.
Yeah, I told them it was the facts on the flyers that they were mad about. The facts.
So when you're talking to the Real News Now, Channel 14.
This is the real news. This is the real news. What did I say to the Jewish news? I said, I didn't even know what Squirrel Hill was, and they laughed at me. I said, I just thought it was a neighborhood.
They didn't believe that. He didn't. He wasn't the one that suggested it. So
who suggested Squirrel Hill? What kind of crazy madman would do that?
No comment. They said I'm not allowed back in Pittsburgh, but...
What's your least favorite shoe manufacturing company?
They would be the ones that broke. 88merch.com. Keeping that busy.
Only the future will show if this was a victory for free speech or a warning against controversial political activism. I'm Gus Topo, Channel 14 News reporting.